Yo, listen up, I got a story about a teacher, Mr. Wright. Yeah, he's a biology creature. In the classroom, he's spitting knowledge like a preacher. With his lab coat on, he's the lyrical feature. He's got test tubes and beakers mixing up that potion, teaching us about cells and the process of mitosis.
Hi, Year 11s. This is going to be the third PowerPoint for our infectious diseases topic. Well, it's going to be a really short one. There's only really 2 slides of content here. We're going to be talking about epidemics, so let's begin. So as I said, this is a really short PowerPoint this week, and we're going to get to the bulk of infectious diseases in the coming weeks. So these ones are quite short. Starting with just the definitions of what epidemic, endemic, and pandemic are. Now, obviously, as most of you have probably just lived through one of the biggest pandemics we've seen in a while, these terminology might be familiar with you. We'll start with, obviously, epidemic, which is what the name of this topic is. So an epidemic is when a pathogen or disease spreads more than usual in a short space of time. So it's unexpected how fast it kind of moves. And it might be in that geographical location, it might be outside of that geographical location. But essentially, in an area, the pathogen or disease is spreading faster than we expected, and hence we call that an epidemic. The term endemic is going to be used purely when we're talking about a disease or pathogen spreading rapidly in one geographical location. So I suppose when we started talking about COVID, and it looked like COVID was pretty much contained in Wuhan, that we would classify that as endemic. It was endemic to Wuhan at that point. Obviously, it did spread, and we'll talk about that in coming weeks and how infection can spread. But once it does spread and it becomes across the globe, worldwide, that's when we start calling something a pandemic. So COVID was a pandemic because the disease or the pathogen spread rapidly across the globe. Generally, an epidemic itself, so something spreading faster than we expect, is going to be caused by how infectious a pathogen is. So generally that's going to be caused by how fast it can mutate, whether it can affect large groups of people that haven't been exposed, can it transmit between different species, and is there a low level of immunity or defence in the population? Which is why, if you think back to our lockdown, specifically in South Australia, we were desperately locking down, trying to keep up until enough people were vaccinated, so we didn't have that low immunity or low defence in the population. You don't need to note this one down, obviously, but this is just a little bit of a slide from Wikipedia, looking at the history of epidemics and how much percentage of the population has been lost, and the death toll of these. So we can see, obviously, moving down, that COVID being the most recent pandemic/epidemic, still managed to reach number 5 on that list, with between 7 to 35 million people killed as of 2024. We don't have a percentage of population from that, but knowing that basically if it says worldwide here, we are looking at a pandemic. The rest we're probably looking at an epidemic in that aspect. But there's a little bit of statistics there for you to help kind of get that point across. Moving that a little bit further, what's going to influence diseases to spread faster than usual? So the first one of those is going to be population mobility. So the more mobile the population, or the more frequently they move, the chance that disease is going to spread increases. When we're looking now that we have cheaper international travel than we've ever had before, we've got increased population, increased number of people travelling, infectious diseases spreads much more rapidly than it ever has, because as we move between those international borders, we're finding new hosts that are available, and the disease can spread at a faster rate, and because it's spreading faster, the chance of mutation technically also increases as well. We also look at sanitation levels, so obviously low-income countries have poorer sanitation at times because they have less access to fresh, clean water. By having less fresh, clean water, we increase the likelihood of consuming contaminated water, which increases the chance of disease. When we're looking at increased war and conflict, which we can easily see in the globe at the moment, that can also cause poor living conditions for things such as refugee camps, where people are forced to go to certain areas but don't have quite the same hygiene levels because they've had to move abruptly from their home, and hence they don't have those same resources. Pathogens often like to hide in other species as well, so they can hide in other species and then make that jump to animals. So how, whether it can spread from animals can influence how fast disease spreads. And lastly will be the ability to evade the immune system. So some pathogens can hide inside side of our cells. They wait to replicate to a high enough number, and that's when they start to cause symptoms. But at that point, it's too late to fight off the infection because your body hasn't recognized it, and there's too many to fight off in that short amount of time. That's it for content for this week. We will look at some workbook questions this week as well. There's also going to be these two videos, so superbugs and how measles made a comeback, which I'd like you to watch on Doing Science Right. I'll show them in class, obviously, but both of these are on Doing Science Right, and I'd recommend watching those because they will help with this topic as well.